My name is Eleanor Birch, but everyone calls me Ellie. For most of my life, I've found joy in simple things. Watching sunsets over the rocky coast of Maine, baking pies for neighbors and spending time with my grandson Asher. He was the light of my life after losing my husband years ago. At 5 years old, Asher had this contagious laugh that could brighten even the darkest days. We'd spend hours at the beach collecting seashells or painting pictures of lighthouses on rainy afternoons. But all of that changed when tragedy struck. It started with a phone call, a car accident on Route 9. My son Caleb didn't make it. The world seemed to stop spinning. As if his death wasn't enough, his wife, Vivian, turned cold overnight. She stopped answering my calls, canceled our weekly visits, and eventually moved out of state without so much as a goodbye. That's when I realized something was terribly wrong. When I finally tracked her down, she told me flat out that I wouldn't see Asher again. Just like that, my grandson, the very center of my universe, was ripped away from me. I couldn't just sit back and let Vivian take Asher away. I tried everything. Calling, emailing, showing up unannounced at her office building in Boston. Each attempt ended the same way, either ignored or met with hostility. Once she even threatened to involve the police if I came near them again. It broke my heart, but what hurt more was knowing how little she cared about Asher. Vivian always resented me. She thought I meddled too much in their family affairs while Caleb was alive. But now she saw me as nothing more than an obstacle. I later discovered she'd filed legal papers seeking sole custody of Asher, effectively erasing any rights I might have had as a grandparent. Sitting alone in my cottage, staring at photos of Asher's smiling face, I felt powerless. How could someone who claimed to love him treat him and me like this? Something inside me snapped. If the law wouldn't help me, I'd find another way. I'm not the type to give up easily. Over the next few weeks, I poured myself into researching custody laws and anything else that might give me leverage against Vivian. It wasn't easy. Every lead seemed to hit a dead end. But then one day, while browsing through old books at the local library, I stumbled upon a familiar face behind the counter. His name was Jasper, a retired private investigator who used to live in town. He remembered me from years ago when Caleb was still young. Jasper listened patiently as I explained my situation. At first, he warned me against taking drastic measures. "You don't want to play dirty, Ellie," he said. But when I told him about Vivian's threats and the custody battle, his expression softened. "Sometimes," he murmured, "you have to fight fire with fire." From that moment on, Jasper became my ally. Together, we began piecing together clues about Vivian's life, her habits, her weaknesses, and most importantly, where she kept Asher. As Jasper helped me dig deeper, pieces of Vivian's true nature began to surface. She wasn't just ambitious, she was ruthless. Her career as a corporate lawyer demanded long hours and frequent travel, leaving Asher in the care of nannies who barely knew him. Worse yet, there were whispers of unethical practices at her firm, bribes, cover-ups, and shady deals. Jasper assured me these details could be useful, though legally proving neglect would still be nearly impossible. But something else caught my attention. A pattern of behavior that hinted at instability. Vivian often left Asher alone for days at a time, sometimes forgetting to check in altogether. One nanny confided in us, saying Asher once cried himself to sleep because Vivian missed his birthday. Hearing that tore me apart. My sweet boy deserved better than this. And yet the system was rigged against me. Without concrete evidence, I was stuck watching from the sidelines as Vivian destroyed what little remained of our family. The final straw came when I received a package in the mail. Inside was a drawing Asher had made, a crude sketch of a house with stick figures standing outside. Scrawled across the top were the words, "I miss you, Grandma." Someone, a kind-hearted nanny perhaps, had sent it to me anonymously. Clutching the paper in trembling hands, I vowed to do whatever it took to bring Asher home. That night, I sat down with Jasper and laid out a plan. We decided to gather as much dirt on Vivian as possible. Not just to expose her parenting flaws but to tarnish her professional reputation too. It felt wrong, manipulative even, but desperation has a way of clouding your judgment. I justified it by telling myself that Asher's well-being was worth any price. Little did I know this decision would set off a chain reaction neither of us could foresee. Our plan unfolded slowly, methodically. Using information Jasper uncovered, I anonymously tipped off journalists about Vivian's questionable business dealings. Within weeks, articles began surfacing online, questioning her ethics and integrity. Her firm distanced itself from her, and soon she was scrambling to salvage her career. Meanwhile, I kept tabs on her movements, waiting for the perfect opportunity to strike. Then came the news. Vivian would be attending a high-profile conference in Portland, just 2 towns over. This was my chance. I booked a room at the same hotel under a fake name and prepared for a confrontation. My heart raced as I rehearsed what I'd say, how I'd beg her to reconsider, to think of Asher's future. But deep down I knew begging wouldn't work. Vivian wasn't the kind of person who responded to reason. No, this meeting would require something far more drastic. Something unforgettable. I'll never forget the moment I saw Vivian step out of the elevator at the hotel. She looked polished as ever in her tailored suit, her heels clicking against the marble floor. My stomach churned with a mix of fear and determination. I had rehearsed this confrontation 100 times in my head, but now that it was happening, my mind went blank. When I approached her in the lobby, she barely glanced at me before turning away. "What are you doing here, Eleanor?" she snapped, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to stay calm. "We need to talk about Asher," I said, my voice trembling. "He misses me. He needs me." For a split second I thought I saw a flicker of guilt in her eyes, but then it vanished, replaced by cold indifference. "You're delusional," she hissed. "Stay away from us or I'll make sure you regret it." The encounter left me shaken. I hadn't expected her to be so cruel, so dismissive. As I stood there watching her walk away, something inside me hardened. This wasn't just about Asher anymore. It was personal. Vivian had taken everything from me. My son, my grandson, my peace of mind, and now she was threatening to take even more. I realized then that I couldn't rely on reason or emotion to win her over. If I wanted Asher back, I'd have to fight dirty. That night, I sat alone in my hotel room, staring at the ceiling as anger simmered beneath my skin. Jasper's words echoed in my mind. Sometimes, you have to fight fire with fire. But how far was I willing to go? The answer came to me in flashes. Small acts of sabotage that would chip away at Vivian's perfect facade. First, I leaked more damaging information about her firm to investigative journalists. Then I anonymously tipped off Child Protective Services, urging them to investigate her parenting practices. Each move felt like stepping further into darkness, but I told myself it was for Asher. As the days passed, I noticed subtle changes in Vivian's demeanor. She became paranoid, jumping at every unexpected knock on her door. Her reputation crumbled piece by piece, and though it gave me a twisted sense of satisfaction, it also filled me with unease. Was I becoming someone I didn't recognize? Someone as ruthless as Vivian herself? Yet every time doubt crept in, I reminded myself of Asher's drawing, the one that read, "I miss you, Grandma." That single phrase kept me going no matter the cost. While Vivian spiraled into chaos, I focused on building a connection with Asher. Through a sympathetic nanny named Clara, I managed to exchange letters and small gifts with him. At first, Asher's responses were hesitant, short sentences scribbled in crayon, but gradually they grew warmer. One letter in particular brought tears to my eyes. "Grandma, I wish you were here. Mommy is always busy and sometimes I feel lonely." Reading those words broke my heart all over again, but they also fueled my resolve. Meanwhile, Vivian's paranoia reached new heights. She accused Clara of leaking information and fired her on the spot. Clara, however, proved to be an invaluable ally. Before leaving, she smuggled out photos of Asher and details about their daily routine. These glimpses into his life were bittersweet. They reminded me of what I'd lost, but they also gave me hope. With Clara's help, I began planning my next move. A surprise visit to wherever Vivian had hidden Asher. It was risky, reckless even, but I couldn't keep waiting. Time was running out. Just when I thought I could trust Jasper completely, disaster struck. One evening he called me to his bookstore claiming he had urgent news. When I arrived, his expression was grim. "Ellie," he began, avoiding my gaze, "there's something you need to know." My stomach dropped. "What is it?" I demanded. He hesitated before confessing. Years ago, Vivian had hired him to spy on me during a family dispute. He'd been feeding her information about my movements ever since. The betrayal hit me like a punch to the gut. How could I have been so blind? Jasper tried to explain, saying he'd only done it because he thought it would keep the peace. But none of that mattered now. All I could think about was how many opportunities Vivian had gained because of him. Every misstep, every failed attempt to reach Asher. It was all his fault. I stormed out of the bookstore without another word, feeling utterly alone. If I wanted to save Asher, I'd have to do it on my own. After cutting ties with Jasper, I retreated to my seaside cottage, cutting off communication with everyone except Clara. I knew I couldn't trust anyone, not anymore. But isolation didn't mean inaction. I spent my days tutoring underprivileged children in town, channeling my grief into something productive. Teaching gave me purpose, even if it couldn't fill the void Asher had left behind. At night, I worked tirelessly on my plan to confront Vivian once and for all. Using the information Clara provided, I tracked her to a secluded neighborhood in Concord, New Hampshire. It wasn't easy. Vivian had gone off-grid, changing phone numbers and addresses regularly, but I refused to give up. I memorized her schedule, noting when she left for work and when Asher was alone with whichever nanny she'd hired next. Finally, after weeks of preparation, the pieces fell into place. It was time to act. The day I reunited with Asher was both the happiest and most terrifying moment of my life. Armed with forged documents and a fake ID, I posed as a social worker sent to evaluate Asher's living conditions. When the current nanny opened the door, I slipped inside, my heart pounding. And then I saw him, my sweet boy, sitting on the couch with a coloring book. "Asher," I whispered, tears streaming down my face. He looked up, confusion written across his face. "Grandma?" he asked tentatively. I nodded, pulling him into my arms. For a few precious minutes, we held each other tightly, neither of us wanting to let go. Then reality set in. I knew I couldn't stay. I had to get Asher out of there before Vivian returned. With Clara's help, I arranged for a temporary foster family to care for him until the legal battle concluded. As much as it pained me to leave him again, I promised myself it wouldn't be forever. For the briefest moment, I allowed myself to believe things might turn out okay. Asher seemed happier than I'd seen him in years, laughing and playing freely with the foster family's children. We spent hours together painting seashells and telling stories just like old times. He talked about missing me, about wishing we could live together again. Those conversations filled me with hope, but also dread. Hope that maybe, just maybe, I could win custody. And dread because I knew Vivian wouldn't give up without a fight. Still, I cherished every second we had. I wrote letters to Asher, pouring my heart onto paper, hoping they would remind him of our bond long after I was gone. In return, he drew pictures for me: lighthouses, sailboats, and stick-figure families holding hands. Each one felt like a lifeline, keeping me tethered to the person who mattered most. But deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that happiness this fragile was bound to shatter. It didn't take long for Vivian to retaliate. She filed a countersuit, accusing me of emotional manipulation and instability. Her lawyers painted me as a desperate, meddling grandmother who couldn't accept reality. They presented fabricated evidence: emails allegedly showing my attempts to alienate Asher from his mother, photos of my empty house meant to imply neglect. The media ate it up, portraying me as the villain in this twisted drama. I fought back as best I could, but the odds were stacked against me. Without concrete proof of Vivian's neglect, the court sided with her. The judge ruled that Asher should remain in her custody, citing stability as the deciding factor. As the gavel came down, I felt the world collapse around me. All my efforts, all my sacrifices, they amounted to nothing. Vivian had won and I had lost everything. In the aftermath of the trial, I made the hardest decision of my life. Knowing that continuing to fight would only traumatize Asher further, I chose to step aside. I contacted the foster family and asked them to continue caring for him temporarily, ensuring he'd have a stable environment while Vivian sorted out her mess. It nearly killed me to walk away, but I convinced myself it was the right thing to do, for Asher's sake. Before leaving, I wrote him one final letter. In it, I explained everything: that I loved him more than anything, that I'd fought for him because I believed he deserved better, and that no matter what happened he would always have a place in my heart. I tucked the letter into an envelope along with a seashell necklace I'd made for him. Then, with tears streaming down my face, I handed it to Clara, asking her to deliver it when the time was right. Weeks turned into months and I heard nothing from Asher or Vivian. The silence was deafening, eating away at whatever remained of my spirit. I threw myself into teaching, volunteering, and advocating for grandparents' rights, hoping to find meaning in the wreckage of my life. But no matter how busy I kept myself, the ache never faded. Then one rainy afternoon, a package arrived at my doorstep. Inside was a small wooden box containing Asher's drawings and a note written in his shaky handwriting. "Dear Grandma, thank you for loving me. I will find you someday. Love, Asher." Clutching the note to my chest, I sobbed uncontrollably. His words gave me hope, but they also reminded me of everything I'd lost. For the first time I wondered if revenge had truly been worth it. After that letter from Asher, I clung to it like a lifeline. It was proof that he still remembered me, that somewhere deep inside he loved me too. But as the months dragged on, reality began to sink in. Vivian had disappeared, literally vanished. She quit her job, sold her house, and moved out of state without a trace. No one knew where she'd gone, not even Clara, who had been my only reliable source of information. Without any leads, I felt utterly powerless. The emptiness consumed me. I stopped answering calls from friends, avoided social gatherings, and spent most of my days alone in my cottage, staring at the ocean. The waves crashing against the rocks mirrored the turmoil inside me, a constant reminder of how much I'd lost. At night, I replayed every decision I'd made, questioning whether I could have done things differently. Had my thirst for revenge pushed Vivian further away? Was I truly to blame for this mess? These thoughts haunted me, gnawing at what little peace I had left. Just when I thought I couldn't take another day of solitude, someone unexpected reached out. His name was Marcus, a former colleague of Vivian's who had grown disillusioned with her unethical practices. He contacted me anonymously, claiming he had evidence that could expose her lies once and for all. At first I was skeptical. Another betrayal would have destroyed me, but something about his tone felt genuine. We met in secret at a diner outside town. Marcus handed me a flash drive containing incriminating documents, emails detailing bribes, falsified reports, and even recordings of Vivian discussing her plans to eliminate me from Asher's life. My hands trembled as I scrolled through the files. Here was undeniable proof of her manipulations, enough to turn the tide in my favor, if I acted quickly. But Marcus warned me, she's already fled the country. Even if you win legally, finding her won't be easy. With Marcus's help, I filed an appeal based on the new evidence. Lawyers pored over the documents, confident they could reopen the case. For a brief moment I dared to hope again. Maybe justice wasn't entirely out of reach. Maybe, just maybe, I'd get Asher back. But fate has a cruel sense of timing. By the time the court agreed to review the case, Vivian had already taken Asher overseas. She'd used her connections to secure residency in Switzerland, placing them both beyond the reach of U.S. jurisdiction. The judge expressed sympathy but admitted there was nothing more they could do. As I sat in the courtroom listening to those words, I felt the last flicker of hope extinguish. All my efforts, all my sacrifices, they amounted to nothing. Vivian had won and I was left with nothing but ashes. In the aftermath of the failed appeal, I retreated further into myself. The world seemed grayer, quieter, devoid of joy. I questioned everything I'd done, every lie, every act of sabotage, every moment I let anger consume me. Was it worth it? Did I truly believe revenge would bring Asher back? Or was I so blinded by pain that I couldn't see the destruction I was causing? One evening, as I sorted through old photos of Caleb and Asher, I came across a picture of us at the beach. Asher was laughing, his tiny hand clutching mine, while Caleb stood behind us, smiling proudly. That image hit me harder than anything else. I realized then that I'd become someone I barely recognized. A woman driven by bitterness and vengeance, willing to sacrifice morality for the sake of winning. What kind of example had I set for Asher? Would he ever forgive me for the choices I'd made? Years passed, and though I never stopped searching for Asher, I accepted that he might never come back. I dedicated my life to helping others in similar situations, becoming an advocate for grandparents' rights. My story gained national attention, inspiring changes in custody laws across several states. People praised me for my resilience, but inside I carried the weight of my failures. Then one crisp autumn morning, a young man appeared at my doorstep. His hair was darker, his face leaner, but there was no mistaking those eyes, the same ones that had once sparkled with mischief and laughter. "Grandma," he said hesitantly. My breath caught in my throat. It was Asher, now 18 years old, standing before me. We embraced tightly, tears streaming down both our faces. He told me Vivian had passed away years earlier, leaving him adrift and searching for answers about his past. Though we shared a tearful reunion, there was an unspoken distance between us, a reminder of the years we'd lost. Reconnecting with Asher didn't magically erase the years we'd spent apart. There were awkward silences, misunderstandings, and moments when I wondered if we'd ever truly bridge the gap between us. Yet despite everything we tried, we spent weekends together, slowly piecing together fragments of our fractured relationship. He showed me pictures from his childhood, stories Vivian had told him, and dreams he hoped to pursue. In return, I shared memories of Caleb baking pies and painting seashells. Though our bond was fragile, it gave me a renewed sense of purpose. I continued advocating for families torn apart by custody battles, using my experiences to guide others through their own struggles. People often asked if I regretted the choices I'd made. The truth is I did, but not because I fought for Asher. I regretted letting revenge consume me, allowing bitterness to cloud my judgment. If I could go back, I'd choose love over anger every time. One day, while cleaning out the attic, Asher stumbled upon a box filled with letters I'd written during our separation. Each one chronicled my fears, hopes, and regrets, offering glimpses into the grandmother he barely remembered. As he read them, tears welled up in his eyes. "Why didn't you tell me these existed?" he asked softly. I shrugged, unsure how to explain. "I thought you deserved better," I admitted. "Someone stronger, wiser, less broken." Asher shook his head firmly. "You're my grandma," he said. "And you've always been exactly who I needed." Those words brought me to my knees. For the first time in years, I allowed myself to believe that maybe forgiveness was possible. Not just from Asher, but from myself. The story doesn't end with a happily ever after. While Asher and I rebuilt our relationship, the scars remained, a constant reminder of the damage caused by pride, anger, and betrayal. Vivian may have been wrong in many ways, but so was I. Revenge hadn't healed my wounds. It had only deepened them. And though I eventually found peace, it came at a cost far greater than I'd imagined. As I sit here now, watching Asher paint beside me at the beach, I realize the true lesson of this journey. Love isn't about control or possession. It's about letting go. Letting go of grudges, of expectations, of the need to fix what can't be undone. Sometimes the hardest thing we can do is forgive, not just others but ourselves. Because in the end, love is all we really have. And it's worth fighting for even when the odds feel insurmountable.